Hi, I'm Chris Brennan. Thanks for agreeing to join this workshop. So I'm just going to give you a rundown about background of the research and what the point of the workshop is. And so really it's to try and design a new rehabilitation package for helping patients recover after ankle fracture surgery. So the background, as you know, ankle fractures are very common. A lot of them have surgery. The WAX weight-bearing ankle fracture trial is trying to determine when patients should walk after their surgery. And that leaves the question though of how, because often patients don't walk even when we tell them to because they're scared of pain, falls, re-injury, and that delay can lead to anxiety, blood clots, increased social dependency and delayed return to work and hobbies. And so the purpose of this workshop is to produce an evidence-based rehabilitation package to get them walking again and get them back to normal life. So these are the research phases that we've been through. So the first is to determine if there are certain people at risk of slow recovery, and that's ongoing through the WAX trial. The second is to understand patients' experience of pain and identify helps and hindrances to getting them walking again, and that's through 29 patient and 18 healthcare professional interviews, and thanks for everyone that's helped with those. And the third was to see what are the most common ways that we can get people walking and in other rehabilitation packages that have been done before, and it seemed the most common was education and training. The fourth is now to co-produce a rehabilitation package to get people walking, and that's through workshops with patients and healthcare professionals. The patient workshop was in December 2021, and now this is going to be one of 3 healthcare professional workshops where we're going to iteratively firm this up and create it. So the WAX trial progress, just so you know, we wanted to get about 450 patients. We managed to get over 550, which is fantastic. And then this is a list of all the sites that took part. And again, thank you for everyone that's taken part and helped recruit patients around the country. So this is how the patient workshop went about. So we got 10 patients that had recent ankle fractures. We split them into small groups and we discussed different bits of ankle fracture recovery. And how it worked is they had a workshop similar to yours, a worksheet rather, where we gave them example quotes from that patients had given the interview, and some said, for instance, I don't know how to weight bear or use crutches safely. And then we therefore said, well, we could tell you that and we could give you tips on that. And we said, how do you like that delivered? Would it be videos, pictures, booklets, leaflets? And then we talked about anything else they would want to know around that topic. So for a number of topics, we discussed everything they wanted to know, and then we put it all together and we sent out them a link to basically vote on that. And this was on a scale. So we said, what do you want to know? Swelling, wound concerns? Do you want to know when you can shower, how to carry tea? And then they said, yeah, that would be great to know, or no, I don't really want to know about that. And this is what we came up with. So it's a bit small, the writing here, but you can see most people, they wanted to know about most stuff. There was a few bits they were less interested in about sort of psychological recovery and keeping active. But generally in this knowledge section, there was a lot they wanted to know about, and there's 10 different graphs for different aspects of their recovery. And I'll just draw you to a few points with these arrows. So here it's how do you know when it's safe to drive? When is it safe to remove the walking boot? And when can they get the wound wet? Again, everyone wanted to know about that. And so as you'll see as part of this workshop, we're going to try and give them some standardized information on that. As you might know, it's quite variable. And they certainly felt it was quite variable. Different people would tell them different things. We also asked them how they would like it delivered. Most people wanted it delivered in the form of an app, or and they were less interested in having it in sort of a booklet or email form. We also asked, would you want to have this and never see a physiotherapist? And they were really quite against that idea, but they were more open to having it an app to support them rather than having to go back and see a surgeon or a physiotherapist over and over and over. So this is how this new recovery pathway or app might work and how it might be tested if you were going to do a trial on it, for instance. So patient might have surgery whilst they're waiting for their operation. They then, or shortly after, they'd be randomized to have the app or not. If they were in the usual care pathway, they would just go away, come back at 2 weeks, come back at 6 weeks, and then have whatever physiotherapy would normally be prescribed. If they're in the app group, they would go home after the operation. They could then have access to it even from 0 to 2 weeks for information and questions. They come back at 2 weeks. They could then be discharged at 2 weeks if they liked, or they could come back at 6 weeks if they preferred, or whatever the surgeon wanted as well. But they would have access to this app and contact with a virtual physiotherapist Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, basically at any time in a year post-op. And if they needed to come in for extra reviews, then that could be arranged. So that's just a flavour of how it could work and what the sort of overall concept is. And the purpose of this workshop is to really, again, refine some of that advice that the patient wanted. So again, this will be done on a questionnaire like a scale that we'll be sending out to people. And what we're really trying to find is, can we come up with statements or advice that are applicable to 75% of your patients? Now, there are always going to be a subset of patients, diabetics, peripheral neuropathy, other reasons where their advice, it's non-standard. But generally, you fix an ankle fracture, you're happy with it. What would you be happy to tell that patient about various aspects of their recovery? Again, when they can remove their boot, when they can start walking, and then so examples here of when they can get their wound wet. So there's some time frames here, 2, 4, and 6 weeks after surgery, but there's also about sort of yes or no criteria for them. Now, many people would say, well, they can get it wet once it's healed, but patients really have trouble with that. Some people think that healed means that as soon as the stitches come out. Other people think it's a year down the line when you can barely see the scar anymore. So the word healed is a no-go for patients. So how else can we sort of convey that to them? And so it might be that you say, look, once the wound is dry and it's been 2 weeks, that's okay. And so this is what we're going to try and do in the workshop. And if you get kind of a chance to have a quick look through and write some comments or things that stand out, that'll just make it a bit quicker on the day, but no worries if you can't manage that. So the point of the workshop, again, is to really gain consensus for parts of advice that patients wanted to know about and something that's applicable to most of your patients. And it's also to create a service that is acceptable to healthcare professionals. And we'll do that by discussing each bit in turn, each section, looking at the wording, putting in any extra content we think would be helpful. That will then be sent out to you and other healthcare professionals in a big voting panel, and then you'll vote on it, and we'll hopefully come up with a consensus that we can give to people. So just again, an example, what you're really doing in this workshop is to say, how can we make this statement? So let's say patients can get their surgical wound wet 2 weeks after surgery if the wound is dry. How can we make as many people want to tick that box and say, yeah, that's absolutely fine, tell that to people. Now you might say, once the wound is dry, but you might say, well, it's dry, but what if it's got some scabs on? No, no, I wouldn't be happy then if they had scabs on. So in which case we could amend the statement and say they can get the wound wet after surgery if it is dry and it has no scabs. And again, there might be another comment you think is needed to really make that applicable to as many patients as possible. So that's really what this workshop is about, trying to get these statements that that everyone is going to agree with and think is good to give to patients and help them with their recovery. So it's about tweaking these comments. So that's the idea of it. And just to say, many of you may think that this rehab app is terrible and it's not the way we should be going in healthcare, and decreasing patient follow-up is a terrible idea. And you might be right. But for the purpose of this workshop, if you can try to put that aside and just say, how can we make this more applicable? How can we make it more appealing? It might be that we decide it's not the way to go, but it's just about working through some of those challenges to make it as appealing for patients and healthcare professionals as possible. So yeah, if you get a chance to have a look at the worksheet beforehand, great. If not, I'll see you on the day, and I look forward to seeing you at the workshop. See you soon.